This is Alpena, Michigan. Alpena made its fortunes in fish, then lumber, and now cement. The town grew up here on the river, and you would think that this is where the first settlement was, but it wasn't. The first settlement is 13 miles that way. A 215-acre island called Thunder Bay Island. And the island has the distinction for a lot of firsts in the area. And Poppins and I have arranged for a visit with the lighthouse keepers. We don't know what to expect on our way or out at the island, but isn't every adventure like that? You ready, Poppins?
Ready, handsome.
I'm Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
The channel's Restless Viking. Let's go on an adventure. So after about 7 miles or 8 miles or so, you come to North Point, and we left Alpena, which is kind of in the bay. We came out, and now we have to go that way to Thunder Bay Island, which is right out there. So I think we're close enough that you can see on these little cameras. We have 2 islands here, and we came from the bay. Alpena's about, I don't know, 8 or 9 miles that way. And we have Sugar Island and then Thunder Bay Island. So it's the 1830s, and Michigan is in the process of becoming a state. And settlers started to move up into this area, which was completely wilderness except for a couple forts like Fort Mackinac and maybe Fort St. Joseph. So they came up here to settle, and they didn't really often settle out here in the mainland. They chose islands to settle on. Part of the reason is the first big ship on the Great Lakes was Le Griffon. When they would stop in this area, they would stop on that island because it's a really easy mark to find. There's 2 islands there. And the area in between is very protected from wind and waves. They could land there, it's easy to see. When they started settlements, they kind of used the same concept, an easy to find place. But in addition, they didn't really know what the wilderness held, if the indigenous people were going to be friendly or not. So by being on an island, you had a little more safety by being out there. So eventually that settlement reached about 300 people. It had the first school, the first store. Today, no one stays there. The last permanent residents to leave would have been the Coast Guard back in the 1980s.
So before Michigan even became a state, Congress appropriated money to build a lighthouse. A crew of 12 men came out here to build the lighthouse. They'd gotten started and they had built some walls and some parts, and then waves washed over the entire island during a storm. By 1832, they had a 21-foot base and a 40-foot high lighthouse built here.
The bugs will find you, Poppins.
I didn't think the bugs would be bad while we're out on the water.
And it's gonna be a moment of truth, because you all know how I make a little fun of Poppins for always needing a bug shirt. And I'm not sure if I brought mine, but I think today's gonna be the day that I wished I had. I did bring a bug shirt.
So this whole area was known as Shipwreck Alley.
So the lighthouse was here because it's dangerous. There's a shelf right here that starts of that limestone. And there's also a pretty big shelf you can see that goes out there. And it's claimed ships, but interestingly, it's claimed yachts. So that's the panacea. And a retired teacher was and his family was on a trip from Wisconsin to Florida. When they hit the south shelf here in heavy weather, the boat washed up on shore in 1988. So it's still claiming shipwrecks.
As we motored around the island, we passed over an easy-to-access shipwreck in 17 feet of water. The Mono Handset sank in 1907. She was taking shelter behind the island, carrying coal, caught fire, and burned to her waterline. All crew were saved thanks to being a few hundred yards from the life-saving station.
So in 1848, the New Jersey Governor Newell proposed life-saving stations to be placed along the coasts of the United States. So they started building them. There were quite a few in Michigan, and it wasn't until 1876 that they built one here on Thunder Bay Island, and that ushered in the era of the life-saving service and eventually the Coast Guard and their time on this island, which ended in the 80s. And right over there where the boat is moored is the remnants of the Coast Guard boathouse that was here. Just a few years ago, it was still standing, but I guess the weather and the ice got to it. You can see the foundation just below the water line. So from the boathouse, They had a dock that went inland, and there should be some pilings. You can see them over there, little skips of rocks. And we are docked, but probably 100 yards from shore. You got the dock, and then apparently it's marked easy wading path in. So all your electronics go in your bag, and we get off and we just head down the dock and we see what's going on. First, we'll shut off all the electronics. Shut off the battery. Take the key. Crazy adventures, Poppins. So I think we go this way, Poppins.
All right.
So eventually the fishery declined and the village moved. Most of the people moved to what was up and coming Alpena because logging became the industry of the area. And you can see straight out there is where the Coast Guard boathouse was. You can see where the dock came in and then went that way. So if you were a Coast Guardman or if you were the life-saving service, you would have put your stuff on a trolley that would have gone from here about a half a mile to the other side of the island where the lighthouse was. And this is the remnants of that tramway coming up through here and going into the woods. We just have to find the trail. We know we're pretty close to it somewhere. Poppins is getting her backpack on.
Bug shirt.
And her bug shirt. Good idea, Poppins. I have mine still put away. Now today, part of Thunder Bay Island is owned by Alpena Township, I believe, and then the other part is owned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and is a sanctuary, a wildlife sanctuary. And I think I hear the tractor coming.
Oh, I'm so glad. This is also a wild nature preserve for poison ivy.
Well, I think we have a ride coming, Poppins.
Hey.
That's an old tractor.
This is awesome.
Chuck Hayden?
Dave Skibby.
Dave?
Dave, Martha.
Martha, nice to meet you.
you.
So you've been out here working with this project for a long time, or?
Yeah, I got involved someplace around 2000.
That's Dave. His wife, she's the president of the Preservation Society. When she mentioned heading out to an island years ago for a work session with her lighthouse group, Dave was a bit taken aback. I mean, here's a woman who's not exactly a fan of water, poison ivy, or boats, yet before long, her passion for preserving these beacons of the sea pulled Dave right into the thick of it. And it's not just a casual involvement. They're neck deep in what can only be described as a Herculean task. It's like trying to navigate a storm with a leaky boat. Every step forward brings a new challenge, and every challenge makes you wonder how they manage to keep going.
Yeah.
Well, it was nice to meet you. We'll let you get back to work.
Very good. Yep. Thank you.
Well, I guess that wasn't our ride. I guess we're on our own.
He's got work.
How are you guys doing? I'm Chuck. That's Poppins.
Hi, Chuck. I'm Dan.
Dan, nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Rick, nice to meet you.
Meet you. Tom.
Tom, nice to meet you.
Chuck it is?
Chuck, yes, sir.
All right.
Yep.
Martha, hello, Tom.
I'm Dan.
Dan, nice to meet you.
She really enjoyed the fairy forest, she called it, coming in.
It is. The 3 colors of forget-me-nots are this thick, and they cover the whole path. An incredible woman who was the wife of the life-saving service Captain John Person, Celia Person. She grew extraordinary flowers out here, if you can imagine. She was the first female boat captain on the Great Lakes.
Really?
Her license copy is upstairs in one of our,
Seriously?
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
And she would pilot her own little, they call it the flower yacht. She would take it from here into Alpena and deliver flowers to her friends. I mean, it's hard to
So
visualize.
she left quite a legacy, but
They
the flowers
both
are
did.
the,
Yeah, they both
They
did.
both
Like,
did. Quite obviously.
Aha! Was this this is the mechanical room, then the boiler room?
It is, yep, yep. And we leave this open in case someone gets in distress on a boat.
They have shelter.
So that they have shelter. So we never lock this outside door. That wall, they used to do big, humongous landscape puzzles. The Coast Guard were bored, and so when they were done, they took construction adhesive and glued them to the wall. So we had no.
So this was a day room, and
This was their day room.
this was a little different than most lighthouses because the Coast Guard stayed here for so long.
We had so many major projects completely restored back to when they remodeled in 1955. This is the way it looked the day that this gentleman moved into this room. This is my heroine, Celia Person. Yep.
oh,
Yeah.
And that's her boat.
That's her boat.
So the Coast Guard, in their stories, talk about the Jeep that they had in the island that they would drive around on the two roads. And there it is.
So everything in here is the way it was in 1868 when they built this building.
That's Sue. She's like the godmother of the Preservation Society, a role she stumbled into more than 2 decades ago. It started with a simple request. We just need a secretary, they said. It wasn't long before she found herself elbow deep in grime and grit on some small remote island. That's when the magic happened. She's got a fire and a brain packed with knowledge that makes some of us look like kindergartners. She's navigated the labyrinth of bureaucratic red tape, wrestled with countless government agencies, and probably faced moments of despair that would have broken lesser souls. But there she was, right in the thick of it, armed with tools and surrounded by dust, breathing new life into history. Her boundless energy has brought this place a few more decades of breath.
I do not want to go to an island. I'm allergic to poison ivy, but I'm going to humor you and go. And it was a life-changing experience. We came to open the island, and that was a hook. I mean, it was just, I just felt their spirit.
Well, I'm retired, and if I'm not doing something productive, it does something to my self-worth. Now, pulling staples out of this wall today is not a big deal, but to me, there's a little bit of legacy I'm leaving for the next group.
And that was Dan. His commitment isn't loud, but it's profound. He's driven to leave a legacy that ensures the sweat and struggles of today won't be forgotten tomorrow.
Look at the view.
It's enough to make you question yourself. Here we are enjoying the fruits of their labor while they're out there pouring every ounce of their being into preserving a piece of our past.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of the difference between those who merely consume and those who create something.
Look at that. What an amazing view. But the top of the Thunder Bay Island Lighthouse. One of the first lighthouses on the Great Lakes. The lighthouse is definitely a mark on this island and its history. Let's go check out some more marks that were left.
so they used this trolley to bring their gear from the dock out that way in toward the lighthouse.
Because my wife and I, we come out here all the time and walk around. And but we didn't know there was an organization that could, you know, maintain it.
Yeah.
And, I thought it was government owned or something, you know.
Sure.
And then he talked to me about it, and as soon as he said, "Would you like to?" I said, "Heck yeah." Yeah.
That
I
is
think,
fantastic.
I think it's an awesome thing to do.
So basically, this is the seafloor that existed millennia ago.
Yeah, and if you look down, you'll see coral. And
So interestingly, We're looking for some carvings in the limestone, and the entire island is part of the Niagara Escarpment, where the ancient seabed has risen up, and nothing but limestone, which is why cement is such a prevalent industry up in this area. So in May of 1923, the U.S. Lighthouse Service and some of the members here carved their name into the limestone, and there's a few of these throughout the island, and it's very cool that they've left their mark here. Not only the lighthouse, but a little piece of history that you don't see every day. And here's the rock you start to find names everywhere. Lighthouse keeper from the 1830s, there's his name. That's so cool. In 1846, the first store in the county was built here on the island, and the 160 people of the community harvested 12,000 barrels of fish that year. And there were a fleet of fishing boats on the island that numbered 31. After the Lighthouse Saving Service arrived in 1876, in 1878, a Captain John Persons became the captain of the Lighthouse Service, and he served from then until 1912, and he's credited with 1,000 lives saved under his command.
So the person's family lived here year-round for 38 years.
Well, we'll let you guys get back to work. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. I'm all plastic.
Look at me.
Okay.
Sue.
Good to meet you, sir.
Oh, don't be silly.
We
Care of yourself.
we hope to be in touch, and we'll talk more. But thank you so much
Yeah.
for your hospitality. We take our leave of the lighthouse with our chocolate chip cookies. Some amazing people that are working hard to make this work. They do it for free, and they do a lot of work. The first step was replace the roof to protect what they had. That was expensive. Then to protect the light tower with special types of coatings. So hats off to them. So in 1915, the U.S. Life Saving Service became the U.S. Coast Guard. And then in 1930, they built the new Coast Guard station here, which was an era that lasted until 1980.
So when the Coast Guard men were here on the island, their families would sometimes come for a couple weeks as like a summer vacation. And the lighthouse families were thrilled to have new people, especially the children of the lighthouse keeper. They had new friends to play with. They had adventures. Can you imagine having an island to yourself?
And the last Coast Guardsman left in 1980. Coast Guard bulldozed a bunch of the buildings down. Thankfully, they left the lighthouse and the fog signal building, put in excess inventory, and later they were gonna dispose of it. And luckily, in the 90s, the Lighthouse Preservation Society for the Thunder Bay Island Lighthouse stepped up, took possession of it. In partnership with the township, they've started to bring it back. So the whole history of building on this island, from its first settlement to the lighthouse to the Coast Guard station, it all took a lot of effort. It all took a lot of risk. And that effort to restore it is kind of the same story. They still need help, and they need money, and they have a task ahead of them that at times might seem impossible. And it's those few volunteers that make it happen. Well, the community has other things to worry about. The township and these volunteers are doing their best to make it work. And that's quite a story.
And we're going to help. Poppins and I are donating $1,000 of our YouTube revenue to their cause. This old tractor is on its last legs, but it's all they have to unload boats, pull in docks, and generally do all the critical work. They really can't get along without it. We've put a link in the description so that we can all show our appreciation for their work and to lend a hand by donating toward a new tractor. Please give it some consideration. I'm sure they would appreciate any help in preserving this little corner of our history. And make sure you add a note that you're donating for their new tractor.
You can see a few years ago when Michigan was experiencing its high water, how high up the water was by all the dead vegetation. And interestingly, this island's even had storms, as Poppins mentioned, on the south end, that the waves washed completely over the island. There's some old sayings by travelers that if you want to learn about a culture, have their food. Or if you want to learn about a culture, go to their graveyards. Well, if you want to learn about a culture, go visit the people that are doing stuff for free to make this world a little bit better, or to remember this world's history. Then you'll learn about a culture. Well, we're almost back to the boat. If you ever have doubts about humanity, just come to an island like this where people are working hard to restore an old lighthouse, or that are just working against impossible odds. And you'll meet some amazing people who work together as a team, who get along. They just care about making the world a better place.
That's cool.
And that's who we look for. And so from Thunder Bay Island in Lake Huron near Alpena, I'm Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again. Yep. So the volunteers, to bring their gear in, and when they're leaving, they have to weight all their gear along that path that we walked. So they have to carry their equipment, everything that they need, wading in the water. What a dedicated group of people.